All right, so picture this. You walk into an event, and there are literally over 500 pizza boxes. That's what went down at a recent AI event in Bengaluru, hosted by Nokia. But it wasn't some casual pizza party. This was serious AI stuff, an AI inference day. And that's what we're digging into today.
Inference Day, yeah. When you think about all the excitement around AI right now, it makes sense that an event like this would draw a crowd. But over 500 pizzas is a lot of people. That really highlights just how much energy there is around AI inference, which for anyone just tuning in is basically how we actually use trained AI models to do useful stuff.
Right, exactly. Like you've got the trained model, now what? Inference is that, now what? And it's a big deal. So our goal today is to unpack what happened at this inference day and try to understand what it tells us about where AI is heading, particularly in this crucial area.
It sounds like a fascinating event. Where do we even begin?
Well, first off, it's important to point out that this was a real team effort. This wasn't just one company putting on a show. This was a collaboration between NVIDIA, Docker, Nokia, and Collabnix. And a huge shout out to Ajit Singh Raina. One of the sources we're looking at today, he was part of the core organizing team, along with Kavita Arora and Savitha Parikh from NVIDIA.
So a real powerhouse team behind this. What was the turnout like?
It was massive. They had over 2,100 registrations, and over 480 people actually showed up. The source describes a real mix of attendees, students who are just starting to learn about AI, all the way to experienced professionals. They spent 2 months planning this, and I'm sure even they were surprised by the response.
That is quite a turnout. So what are we focusing on in this deep dive? Are we just going to run through a list of all the presentations?
Not really. I mean, we'll touch on the main sessions, but we really want to understand the key technical ideas that were discussed, like what were the big aha moments, and why was it so significant to have all of these different companies and experts together in one place? What are the essential takeaways, for someone who wants to quickly grasp the most important developments?
That's the perfect way to approach it. So how did this AI Inference Day actually kick off? Did they jump straight into complex technical talks?
Well, they had to start with registration, of course, but you get the sense from the source that even then, there was a palpable buzz in the air. In fact, they mentioned Shubhendu Shubham, Sangam B, and Ravindran RR setting up cameras bright and early. Seems like they knew something exciting was about to happen.
So what was the first technical session that really got things going?
So the first session was all about laying the groundwork. It was led by Amit Kumar from NVIDIA, and the title was NVIDIA Inference Stack Demystified.
Okay, so inference stack, that sounds pretty fundamental. What does that even mean?
Basically, it's all of the hardware and software that you need to take a trained AI model and actually use it to, make predictions or decisions.
Yeah.
Like, think of it as the engine room of AI applications. They wanted to start by demystifying this so that everyone was on the same page, regardless of their background. And it seems like people were really paying attention because the source specifically mentions lots of note-taking.
That's smart. You need a solid foundation before you can really dive into the complexities of optimization and all that.
Exactly. And speaking of optimization, that's precisely what the next session tackled head-on. This one was led by Utkarsh Upal, also from NVIDIA. He spoke about LLM inference optimization and serving using Tensor LLM and NVIDIA Dynamo. Now, that sounds pretty hardcore.
It does. LLMs, or large language models, are a huge area of focus in AI right now. What's the significance of optimizing how they work?
Well, the thing about LLMs is that they're really powerful, but they also need a ton of computing power, especially when you're using them for things like generating text or answering questions, which, by the way, is the inference part we've been talking about. So Utkarsh dove into techniques for making LLM inference way more efficient.
Give me an example. What kind of techniques did he talk about?
So he talked about things like FP4 and FP8, which are ways to represent numbers using fewer bits. This basically lets you do calculations faster and use less memory, so it's like you're making the engine lighter but more powerful at the same time.
That's fascinating. Anything else?
Yeah, he also talked about something called KV cache reuse, which is a clever way for the model to remember past calculations so it doesn't have to do them over and over again. That can really speed things up. Apparently, this session had a really long Q&A, which suggests people were really interested in making LLMs more practical to use.
I can imagine. Optimizing those resource-intensive models is key for broader adoption. So where did the event go from there?
So the next session took a bit of a different angle. It was called Bridging Data in AI, how Cloudera and NVIDIA drive the future of intelligent enterprises, presented by Manik Mehra, Anukriti Saxena, and Navin Agrawal from Cloudera. What do you think they might have focused on there?
Well, it seems pretty obvious that you can't have AI without data, right? It doesn't matter how sophisticated your AI models are or how well you can run them. If you don't have good data going in, you're not going to get good results coming out. So I'm guessing this session was all about how to connect data workflows with those AI inference pipelines we talked about earlier.
That's exactly it. And the source mentions that they used real-world examples, which is always helpful to make these concepts more concrete. It's one thing to talk about data and AI in theory. It's another thing entirely to see how it actually solves problems for businesses.
Real-world applications make it much more relatable. Okay, what was next on the agenda?
So, next up was Ajit Singh Raina himself from Docker, presenting GPU-accelerated AI inference for local LLM development with Docker Model Runner. Now, I know Docker is all about making software deployment easier, so I imagine this was about making powerful AI tools more accessible to developers.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Docker has really revolutionized how we deploy and manage software. So applying that same thinking to AI inference is a pretty big deal, especially for developers who want to experiment with LLMs and build AI applications without needing massive cloud infrastructure. Makes things much more approachable.
And the source specifically mentions immediate interest from developers during this session. So it sounds like it really resonated with the people in the trenches, so to speak.
I bet. All right. All of this technical deep diving must have worked up an appetite. Wasn't this around the time the 500 pizzas were devoured?
You got it. Lunch break. And, it wasn't just about refueling with all that pizza. The source describes a really vibrant atmosphere with lots of animated discussions and networking.
Those informal interactions are often where the real magic happens, right? You get people from different backgrounds and areas of expertise sharing ideas and building connections. It really amplifies the collaborative spirit of the whole event.
Right. And can you imagine 500 pizza boxes disappearing? That's a lot of people connecting and exchanging ideas.
It paints a vivid picture. So what happened after everyone had their fill of pizza and conversation?
Okay, so after lunch, it was back to the technical deep dive, and the focus remained on optimization. The Sarvam AI team took the stage to present AI inference for enhanced performance and accessibility with TensorE LLM.
So building on those earlier optimization discussions, what was their unique angle?
Well, I think while the previous session was about introducing some of the advanced optimization techniques, this one was more about actually using those tools, especially TensorT LLM, to make a real difference in performance and accessibility. Making those gains tangible and showing how a wider range of people could leverage these optimized models. Keeping the audience engaged right after lunch can be tough, so their presentation must have been pretty compelling.
It sounds like it. So we've covered the basics of inference, the challenges of optimizing LLMs, the vital connection between data and AI, and making these tools more accessible to developers. What else did they cover at this inference day?
Well, this next session addressed something really important that we often don't talk about enough: security. Jaida Patakaria from Deloitte gave a presentation on securing LLM apps with NVIDIA NeMo guardrails.
Ah, yes, security. Especially with all the buzz about the potential dangers of AI, this must have been a crucial topic. So what are NVIDIA NeMo guardrails, and why are they relevant in this context?
NVIDIA NeMo Guardrails is basically a framework that helps developers build safer and more responsible AI systems. Like, it lets them set up boundaries and prevent the models from generating harmful or inappropriate outputs. As we start using these AI-powered applications everywhere, making sure they're secure is absolutely essential if we want people to trust them.
Absolutely. It's not enough for AI to be powerful. It has to be trustworthy as well. Okay, what about the last session of the day?
All right, so the final session was all about bringing these concepts to life. Manjunath Janardhan from GE Healthcare gave a live demonstration titled Fine-Tuning LLMs Locally with NIM and NVIDIA NIM Microservices.
A live demo, always a crowd pleaser. What made this one so special?
Well, first off, having someone from a major company like GE Healthcare, a company that's actually applying this technology in the real world, it really shows the practical side of all of this. They were demonstrating how to fine-tune these LLMs for specific tasks using NVIDIA's NIM microservices, which is pretty advanced stuff.
Yeah.
But seeing it in action, it just makes everything click. It bridges that gap between theory and practice.
Totally agree. A good demo can be incredibly impactful, especially when it comes from someone who's using the technology to solve real-world problems. So was that it? Did the event wrap up with that final demo?
Well, almost. There was one more really interesting segment where Savitha, from NVIDIA actually invited attendees to share their own experiences and feedback.
Oh, that's a great idea. Not just a one-way flow of information, but a genuine conversation.
Exactly. It really shows how important community engagement was to this whole event. They wanted to hear what people were taking away from it, what resonated with them, what they wanted to see more of. That collaborative spirit we've been talking about.
Very cool. So, as we come to the end of this deep dive, let's zoom out a bit. What are the key takeaways about the state of AI inference based on what we've learned about this event? Like, if someone had to explain it to their grandma, what would they say?
Well, I think a couple of things really stand out. First, there's a huge push for efficiency. Making AI inference faster and less resource intensive, especially with these big, powerful LLMs. That's where all the talk about tensor-tep LLM and GPU acceleration comes in.
Right, because even if you have these amazing AI models, they're not very useful if they take forever to run or require a supercomputer to function.
Exactly. Then there's the whole idea of accessibility, like making these tools easier to use for developers and researchers so that more people can experiment and build innovative applications with AI. And Docker seems to be playing a big role there.
And, of course, we can't forget about security, which was highlighted as a crucial consideration as we deploy more and more AI-powered systems.
And even beyond the specific technologies, I think what's really striking is the collaborative spirit that was evident throughout this inference day. You had NVIDIA, Docker, Cloudera, Servam.ai, Deloitte, GE Healthcare, all these different players coming together to share knowledge and advance the field.
The source even mentions those collective aha moments. Sounds like there's a real sense of shared learning and discovery. It makes you wonder what kinds of amazing advancements are going to come out of these kinds of collaborations in the near future.
And we can't forget the other organizers, Syed Mansoor A., Jagadesh Virla, Cody Valanki, Shubhendu Sangam, and Ravindran. The fact that they're already thinking about larger venues for future events speaks volumes about the enthusiasm surrounding AI inference right now.
Clearly, this wasn't just a typical tech conference. This was a real community coming together to drive progress in a field that's going to have a massive impact on pretty much everything.
So for anyone listening who might be thinking, well, that's great, but what does it all mean for me? That's the question to ponder.
Right. It's not just about understanding the technical details. It's about recognizing the sheer speed at which AI deployment is moving forward and how important it is to, at the very least, be aware of these underlying technologies. These advancements are going to shape everything from healthcare and finance to entertainment and transportation.
Exactly. So here's the final thought we'll leave you with. Think about your own area of interest, your work, your life. How might these rapid advancements in AI inference, fueled by these collaborations, shape developments in those areas? What kinds of aha moments might be just around the corner waiting to be discovered?
Definitely something to reflect on. And we'll be here to explore those future developments in our upcoming deep dives.